Okay, so I believe that we can start. Let's let's start from the brief overview of what will be discussed today and what we will cover. So basically, if we will not include this like organizational slides, we will see two parts of webinar. It will be strategic view on in general how KYB can be organized and what priorities and flows are there, and also the tactics, how on two case examples, how to improve the user experience in tactic and really gives people feeling that they can trust the product and can securely work with it in future. So a few words about me. I'm already 12 years in the IT. I worked as a project manager and product manager, but shifted my career to the UX and became UX architect. And I am very proud and happy about it because it allows me to interact with different stakeholders, with different processes, and enhance businesses in general. So I am here, and I work at DeepInspire, the boutique software development company. So during this webinar, you most probably already read the description for it as you are here, but you will be discovering the what does a perfect KYB flow mean, what are typical pain points in UX for KYB, and also some tricky moments not to forget about during this process. So let's start from the statistics. I know that 29% of B2B customers feel fully engaged with their new providers. What about the rest of them? The rest of them are lost at some point and do not understand what is required, what should be done, and how the process looks like. And when we are talking about numbers, there is also a statistics about the impact of onboarding experience to the decision whether to use your product or not. And it says that 63% of respondents answered that they make this decision based on the onboarding process. And it's a huge number, and especially if we are talking about B2B and Fintech, it might be a good revenue advantage. A good revenue enhancement if you fix those issues that you have in your KYB process. So let's align the terms here. So if we are talking about KYB, we are talking about the process of know your business. When we have know your client is a more common term, and know your business is the same but for businesses. It includes much more documents, much more processes, but in general it is the same as KYC for businesses or corporate KYC it's also called. And let me know how familiar are you with KYB process, and if you faced this process, and if you do, what main pain points were there in your experience? Maybe I will answer already for some of your issues that you have in this webinar. So, typically, the most common pain points from my experience, it is a long cycle of KYB compliance flow. So from the moment when the person comes, the company comes to your company and want to start dealing with it, till the moment that they actually can do anything there, sometimes it takes days. For our clients, there were cases when it took weeks, but I heard also about cases when it took like up to 100 days to do all the checks and all the flows that were needed. So that was the main issue, because it stops generating revenue from the clients, and also they have more time to shift their attention to other solutions. That was the second most common question. It's about client drop-off at the KYB stage. Yeah, you also wrote that clients usually don't provide all the info, requiring several calls to complete. Yes, it also face that. we often lose clients halfway through. Yes, definitely. They have, if the process takes too long, it means that they have an opportunity to look to other solutions, and if other solutions provide better conditions for entering and starting using that, they most probably will shift their attention there. Yeah. Thanks. So, what is KYB on practice? It's actually the gap between your client who is willing to use your product and get the benefits that your product provides, and your brilliant product, and you getting the revenue from your client using your product. So you are both interested in filling that gap and starting to use your product as soon as possible. So it's all about user experience, whether this journey will be difficult and long or very easy and smooth, and where the client will be satisfied at the end of this journey. Even before starting using your product, the client can be satisfied with the journey and the care that you provide to your client before even starting using your product. Let's start from strategic vision on that. So, if we are talking about KYB flow, if we simplify it a lot, we can talk about 3 stages: gathering information by you from your clients, and clients sharing this information, also analysis of this information, and making the decision, actually approving or not approving the client to your system. But on practice, the first 2 phases are tightly connected together, because usually from our practice, there are a lot of rounds and communication between the compliance officers and the client. They are asking additional information, clarifying some details, pointing out some mistakes in the provided information, and require fixing that mistakes. So each of these steps can be automated, and the level of automation can be defined based on business needs and the flows that are currently working for your organization. So if we are talking about startups, most probably there will be 1 or 2 person in compliance department, and they will be doing most of the processes manually in the spreadsheets, in some databases they are using. They often communicate with new clients offline, even sometimes send the documents, which is not very secure way to send documents, via email, and then store them on their servers. Also, they can manually communicate with the development team or tech support to switch on the client's profile after the verifications are done. So almost all processes can be manual, but still they can be adjusted the way that might be comfortable for your client, and client will not get lost in all that process. But when we are talking about moving forward and scaling your business, there are a lot of solutions that provide this or that KYB service. For example, part of them provide the integrations via APIs. Some of them provide their interfaces and customizable flows that you can adjust to your company flows. Some of the companies even stepped forward and they gather information from the businesses, and if they require to be onboarded to the other business with the similar requirements as previous, they just ask this client company whether they can share the previously entered data and whether it is updated, and share it directly with that company that requires it right now. So they store the compliance data needed for compliance and share it on demand if there is a need for that. So there are a variety of them, and they have different ways to integrate into your system, but not all the functions in all the cases you will be using. So this is very up to the company what exact thing to use at this moment of business processes and the growth of the company. For example, here is a largely optimized process when some of the processes are already included in the in your software product, and also Some auto pushing, auto checking is done, and the information is provided to compliance officers in more convenient ways. They do not go to different services to check this or that, but in general, it is still working for your company. And if we are talking about the titans of industry, the compliance is only a small part of all the processes that are going around the onboarding, and it's also all the other processes can also be integrated with the compliance flow, and also can be done as a one solid flow that cares for users and building the trust for your business that is crucial in fintech industry. This analytics was prepared by me and Elizabeth Baker, who has a great experience in compliance and risk management. So thanks, Elizabeth, for your insight in this webinar. So when we are talking about jumping from this manual startup flows to the great optimized and integrated into company flows, KYB process, it usually doesn't happen over one night or even over one cycle. Usually, how it usually works, usually you have the version of your product, and if while product is growing, client base is growing, the load on the different flows and services is growing, you are building version after version, and sometimes version 3 will not even include the code of version 1. So how usually we are working with the KYB flows and this versioning. On each of the versions, we build the list of pain points that are currently companies facing with, that can save the most time for the compliance officers, or that can reduce the duration of KYB flow drastically, and we fix them immediately. But while we are doing this, part of the team is also forming list of requirements and visions, the user UX for that, for version 2, that will support the larger number of clients coming in, the larger number of people in compliance or office, also the larger scale of your business. And the same way for each of the versions. While ongoing work is done, we also project the future version. And so what is the perfect user experience in KYB? I would say simply the perfect UX in KYB doesn't exist. User experience in general is always a balance between time, personas, development capacities, budget, priorities that business set, and all other business needs that are there. The major impact the business needs do to the UX, but also all other factors should be taken into account. So when we are talking about UX, the perfect UX, there can't be only one perfect UX and that's it. We also, when we are talking about KYB UX, besides all the factors that were said above, there are also the country, industry, legal requirements, and compliance officer requirements are all forming another layer of conditions on which we are building this KYB process. For startups, there is no need to build some complicated and very automated flows, because they basically will spend all their budget only to KYB processes and will not build the main product and main values that they have. But when we are talking about product growing, all of these factors will shift the KYB vision to some particular point. When we are talking about interesting fact that from my experience, even the compliance officer as a person also makes an impact on KYB processes that are built and integrated in the system. We had a case when the compliance officer, head of compliance, was changed in the company, and we needed to add like 50% more checks and more impact on the company flows were done by that, just because the compliance officer changed and reviewed the processes there. So all of that should be taken into account when building the UX in KYB. So what can you do on any stage of your business? The best thing that you can do is to understand what the next stage of your KYB process looks like, and what resources and time do you need to get there. So factually, we can say that this is a list of questions that I usually start asking clients while when we are consulting them about KYB and onboarding flows, to understand what is the future stage and what is can be enhanced in current stage. So at the end of this presentation, there will be a QR code, so you can scan it and check, download these questions, so to quickly access whenever you need them. Let's get to the tactics then. So how actually make this process for new clients easy and smooth? Of course, I will be referring to the UX heuristics, the basic principles, and they work almost in all areas or in all flows in the systems. But in general, I will not stop on any of them right now. Just jump to the cases, real life cases that we faced, and explain how these heuristics worked there and how they help to improve the time needed to finish the compliance process, and also to save budget on time on compliance officer's time. So the first case is a fintech startup that has very raw KYB processes, and they started small. When new client came, they just had enough time and resources to do all processes manually, discuss everything with the client, fill all forms for him, and actually launch this client to the system. But when business started to rise, it became more complex, and there was just no time to properly work on each case separately, and they needed to automate somehow their processes. So we jumped in, and I was working on the flows here, defining the key pain points in these flows and looking at the solution that we need to enhance them. The requirement of this product was to store every document on their servers. They added this additional security measures, and they were doing it through their system without the integration at that moment. So what was actually there? New user came to the home page where there were different guidances. We can see here 3 types of guidances with links to the not exact pages where the information needed to be added, but to the sections of the application where this information should be added. So in general, the guidance was on the home page, and each time person comes to some page to come back to guidance, the person needed to go back to home page and check when he or she needs to go. The other thing that we discovered was that the users who actually were filling the information usually were not the top management or didn't have senior positions in the companies. They were assistants, and they usually didn't have all the information needed on hand. They came to one page, checked what is needed there, came to some responsible person for that information, took that information, came back to the page, and then add this information. Then come back to the home page again, go to the second page, and the same flow repeated. And it took these iterations with distraction to offline vault, to offline documents gathering, could take weeks. After all was finished, the application was submitted. The compliance officer was checking the information, whether it is correct, what was there, and whether all documents are uploaded. And also, usually there was something wrong, and the communication was initiated by compliance officers. They were messaging, calling, and compliance department was explaining how to fill the information, where it should be added, what information was there. But usually it ended up still by compliance officer manually entering the information that is missing to that particular places in the system. So in general, it took a long time, and also it took a lot of time from compliance officer for all this communication, for all these explanations, and then uploading information. So in general, we defined few things how to improve it, and the first one is guidance. The first and the most important in compliance is guidance. So the user will understand where the user is right now, what is the next step, how much time it will take, and what is happening right now. So we simplified the homepage. We provided the list of needed documents beforehand, before the user jumps into the flow of adding all the documents. Also, we prepared the KYB wizard for adding all that information step by step. And after the application is submitted, there was a feedback from the compliance officer in the convenient form with link to exact pages and with notes what to fix on the exact page, and in general with system status there. So it helped to shorter compliance cycle, and so the business start receiving revenue quicker. Also saving compliance officers time and saving company budget for that. And also the client satisfaction was raised, and the trust to the business was also rising. So let's get to the step-by-step small tweaks that were done in all that enhanced flow. So for example, the homepage, it looked this way, but what we did the only one action button here. When you have in a product, when you have some sandbox or some things that user can try even before onboarding and passing all this compliance check, it's also a good practice to give user some insight what will be the. But in general, what we did just left one button on board now, after which the list of documents will be shown and that needs to be prepared. So it also, there was a button to print it out quickly, so user can just print it out and go with check marks, checking out what was already gathered and what was not. So this is the first thing, guidance on the first step. So user clearly knows what is needed from the user. By the way, we also removed the menu from the top navigation, because it also was distracting. There is like 5 or 6 points in that menu, and at the first step, a client doesn't need to know what is the exact pages there. He just needs to onboard first. Then the guidance through all the steps. As I mentioned earlier, the guidance was done by the homepage with these links that are there, and with this lists of actions here. What we have done, we have transformed it to the wizard with step-by-step guidance, and also with some additional checks on the go, whether information is correct, whether all information is present, and clear vision what will be next for this user. So through all the steps. And guidance again on each of step. As I mentioned, guidance is my favorite thing to do, because when you are feeling guided, there is no need to give you errors and mistakes afterwards. It's always better to ask before than after. So there were guidances and tips on each of the steps, whether what is happening on your current step, or what information was added and how much of that information was added there. Also, the eliminating mistakes, a possibility of mistakes, is one of the heuristics, and it's made a big impact to this flows, because there were checks, double checks, whether you are right that you added only 50% shares, and the 50% beneficial owners are not defined for this company. Also, we were asking even the question whether you are a director or not, because sometimes they were adding the same person 3 or 4 times if it is a director in some company beneficial owner, and it ended up with 4 person who are actually the same. And also it's helped to decrease the load to the compliance officers not to check 4 person who are actually the same person, but they were checking only one of them, and we were ready to put well prepared structure on the back office of that. As I mentioned also previously, at the end after the submission, there was a status displayed of the system, and also displayed the to-do list after the compliance officer checked and something is wrong. There were just exact links to exact pages where it needs to be updated. So this is the flow for Fintech KYB onboarding. And the second case that I would like to share with you is very small and simple, but still it frustrated users a lot. And when I was discussing it with my colleagues, they also faced such things in real life, in real banking applications. So it was uploading documents form that was implemented, included in the flows of the company, that at some point when user comes to some point, it required additional information from user. But when client places photo in this photo or PDF of the document to this form, it just showed a spinner, and that's it. The form didn't change, nothing was displayed, and users at this point were not aware whether the documents were uploaded, or there was just some mistake, or they didn't drop the file there, and they were uploading one more time again and one more time again. And as a result, the compliance officers were checking 4 or 5 the same documents later and defining what is the difference between them, why they uploaded there, and it took a lot of time of compliance officers to process that flow of documents. So what was suggested? It was suggested to just show the pop-up, the simple pop-up that takes like maximum few hours to code if we need to the response from the service that we are uploading photos to, and that will guide users that how much time it takes and what to do if it doesn't change the status of your profile later. This is the simplest thing to do. And the second thing that was suggested is also the displaying the documents that were uploaded, but it required additional security measures from the development points, and it might take a bit more time than just pop up, but still the guidance and the exact list of documents that was uploaded with their status. I would like to ask any questions that you have right now. Just add them to the chat or to the questions and answers box, and we will discuss them. And while you are preparing questions, I can jump to some small tricky points not to forget about. So the main thing of the KYB process in Fintech, and especially in B2B, is gaining trust of the user, gaining that confidence in your product, and so they will be willing to use it in future. So every step that you prepare in KYB flow needs to guide to them gaining this trust and showing you as a trustful partner in making business with. Also, one thing that I believed that this is something that doesn't need to be explained, but recently faced a client who had the MVP version without Google Analytics or any other types of analytics, and it was a nightmare to analyze what is there and why clients do not finish the onboarding process. So no matter KYB process or your application in general, your product in general, use analytics. Google Analytics doesn't make much time to be added in simple form. Yes, there can be some extended variations of using of it, but in general, the simple Google Analytics doesn't take much time to be added, and believe me, it's worth it. And also the things that you shouldn't forget is that KYB is not a one-time process. Directors change their addresses, companies change their directors, beneficial owners, they change structure and even type of companies. So your KYB flows should support later all these updates, and we need also they need to reflect the severity of these changes. For example, some of the changes should stop the company of using your product for a while the compliance is done again, and some of the things like directly changing the address shouldn't stop the company from using your services. And one more thing here is growing businesses mean coordination across the teams. When you are growing, there are a lot of departments appears, and there should be an effective tool to communicate between them and coordinate on all the compliance related things. So I will also share the questions to ask to diagnose your current UX during KYB flow. And this thing we also use to start discussing the KYB process, the current state, and the like ongoing points, pain points that are there. So it will be shared with you. So today we covered the client-facing flow, like the top of the iceberg, but there is a back office coordination between teams, effective third-party integrations, and if you are interested in such kind of webinar as a next step, just drop me the chat, drop your message in the chat, and I will know. Maybe the next webinar that I will be preparing will be related to back office for compliance teams and options that we have there. So in general, all that information that was discussed today should give you some vision on how to approach the KYB flow that you currently have and how to enhance it a little more. But if you are interested, there are also the consulting solutions that we provide. There are different packages, let's say, for it, from the smallest for small businesses and also to the professional and the most complex structured businesses. And usually we involve some on some stage we involve not only the UX architect but the solution architect as well, to better understand and predict how each of the things that we are discussing from the UX point of view might be effectively implemented in your flows. So if you're interested, drop me a message or write to deepinspire.com, email, LinkedIn, etc. So those two checklists that I promised to you can be downloaded by this QR code. Also, for those of you who registered beforehand, there will be the PDF version of the slides will be shared with you, so you can also check it there. So let's go to the questions and answers. What are effective ways to handle user errors in KYB interfaces? The most effective way to handle errors is preventing them. Usually it's better to double check. Are you sure this is correct? Give the preview at the end so user can go through all the answers one more time before submitting the application, and also give some guidance of how the fields should be filled in rather than throwing the error messages to user. But in general, it's better to guide user rather than just point out his mistakes. Okay, how effective are conversational interfaces like chatbots or AI assistants in guiding users through KYB procedures? There are different points of view on that. And I would recommend to use such kind of guidance only in case if they are 100% perfect, would say, because if they are aimed to help user, but they confuse user at some point, even if 20% will confuse and 80 will help, it's still, you will be most likely to lose that 20% because because of the losing the trust to the flow. In general, it's better to give some email for support or phone call for support in that case if you are not confident in 100% in these chatbots or AI assistants. How can I reduce user fatigue during KYB? Yeah, sometimes it takes a long time, and what I would do some encouragement after each of the steps that are finished, some positive feedback that it depends on the project, how corporate it is, how or how friendly can I speak to the user, but sometimes it's like, hooray, you finished adding directors to your company. But sometimes it's success screen will be enough just with success and your changes were successfully saved. And this is one thing. And the second one is giving user a way to exit the flow and come back later at any time. So user should be confident in the knowing that his data is saved, safe, and he can come back later. It's a very important thing in such huge flows as KYB, because it can take days to fill all the information. So exit of the flow and coming back later is very important for that. One of the best ways to onboard them to ask the most necessary questions and require the rest after onboarding. Yes, that's a good point, and it works for most of the businesses, but the fintech is highly regulated by law and by different like regulators. So in that case, there is strict policies that needs to be followed before you are dealing with B2B client. And because if we are talking about KYC and onboarding the client as a physical person, it's easy to verify their driver license or some other documents, and you already know them, and there are tons of such services that do it, and you can gather all needed information later. But when we are talking about B2B in fintech, regulators usually require full structure, full checks, anti-money laundering checks, and other checks to be done before this company starts dealing with your business. So, yeah. Okay, what is do you think the KYB related questions should be asked prior to fully onboarding the customer? If so, why? There are some KYB related questions that can be asked prior, and that can prevent user from adding any other information, because they will define that this company is not trustable, and you can just do not use your system and their time to onboard this. But usually the clients that we faced with, they were requiring some basic information at the beginning, like the type of organization. It also defines the fields and the steps that will be further. And also say required basic like name and some registration number before that, and all the rest was put to the like general onboarding KYB wizard. The Google Analytics is not the only way to monitor the user behavior. There is a question about Google Analytics, whether it is the only one way to monitor it, or there are any alternative to Google Analytics. There are alternatives, but Google Analytics is one of the simplest things that I prefer to work with, because it doesn't require much from the start, and can be extended later with some custom events and custom tracking of things that is needed. But there are also tools that can be used for tracking not only the clicks and events, but also the behavior and the even mouse movements, etc. So there are solutions, and there are a lot of them, but my favorite is Google Analytics at this point. Should guidance be chronological or it should be randomized? Which best works? I'm not sure. What do you mean, like randomized? Because in the wizard that I showed to you, there is a guidance and the sequence of steps, but still if user forgot to add something on some previous step or needs to update something, he can return to that step and update it still. But I'm not sure that I understand quite what do you mean by randomize. Could you please clarify that? If documents upload is seen in the highest drop-off yet, you show users the types of documents at the beginning of the onboarding flow. How do you solve that? Do you mean that it is the hardest thing to upload the documents, and the people usually drop off on the stage of uploading documents? I will show these documents, but I do not require to upload them before the last step. Actually, it's the last step where we upload documents. But when we are talking about onboarding for B2B, they know that they need to provide some information. They are more or less ready to spend some time on it, and they are ready to provide part of this information. But it can be frustrating if you come like 10 steps. You already have filled 10 steps, and the last one you need to prepare like 20 unexpected documents. It can be more frustrating than seeing the list at the beginning, but part of the information that user is entering during this wizard is also present in the documents that are required. So you provide the information about companies, beneficial owners, directors, corporate structure there. So the documents are used not only on the step when you upload them, but also on the steps when you add information from those documents. So yeah, can they move to any section, or they have to move from point A to point B for guidance? There is guidance, but it is not the strict guidance that they should fill one. There are some dependencies between steps. So, for example, if you say that the company B is owns part of shares of company A, then we need to add the information to company B about directors and beneficial owners. But in general, the user can jump from step to step and step back, step forward. But in general, we prepare the structure that the user can follow and will not be mistaken. But if there is a mistake, he can jump back and update it. Okay. How long should sign up form be so that you can get enough information to qualify a user and niche their onboarding versus little information to get them into the flow and then ask more info later? Yeah, as I said before, for the regulatory purposes and legitimacy of the business in fintech, most of countries, at least in Europe and the UK, they require for example, that wizard that I showed to you at the beginning on my slides, it is required before actually using the services. So I didn't face the B2B in fintech that didn't require this onboarding, and because they will not be interested in onboarding later. And we need this information if the regulator comes to us and says, who are your clients and are they trustworthy? So But these things that you are mentioning about asking details later, it works well for the personal individuals, not the companies in Fintech. So yeah. Okay, so it seems that all questions are covered. Do you have more? I want more questions. Okay, so thank you all for your attention, and hope I helped some of you to better understand how to improve the KYB flows. And if you have any questions or would like to discuss something with me, just write me on LinkedIn or on email. I will be happy to if you reach out. Thank you all, and bye.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.